right, thanks for hanging out with us again on OK Movie Stream, where you meet all the stars throughout the region. Many of them have been in our programs and programs all over the country as well. And one of those big stars happens to be with us today, Dr. Mark Sherwood. I'm going to see if I get this right. Hold on.
Okay.
So, you were a professional baseball player.
Yes.
You were a police officer.
Yes.
A SWAT guy.
Correct.
A member of the SWAT team. Member of the power team.
Yes.
You were a security guard for some of the highest profile evangelists in the world.
True.
You were, after that, a doctor, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call it?
An author?
An author, yeah. And a bodybuilder and champion, and an actor and an executive producer. Did anybody ever ask you what do you want to be when you grow up?
I don't know. I think I'm still a little kid, because I've really, the curiosity, the whys, the things that kind of generate creativity, the possibilities. That's always kind of driven me.
Now it's easier for me to interview you because we've known each other a little over 8 years now, and got to be pretty good friends. And you. Where were you? I know that you were adopted. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Tulsa, actually.
Okay.
And adopted, yes. And I was able to meet my birth mother later on after I was 40 or 42 at the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, man, that was a cool thing. It was like almost like a piece of your life puzzle or heart puzzle might have been missing.
Uh-huh.
And it just kind of answered some unanswered questions, like, does anybody look like me, and what, who are these people, and who might have been my siblings, and all this kind of stuff.
I had a friend that was adopted, and he I guess he was adopted by, I think he was with his birth mom, but he had never known his dad. And one day, we're like 18, 19. He said, "Hey, Stevie, let's go to the beach, man." He was like really pumped to want to go to the beach. And I was like, okay. So we get to the beach, and then and he says, "Hey, I want you to go, let's go over here first." And we go to this parking lot, and there's an RV there, camping RV. And he says, "I'm going to be right back." And I'm like, what's going on?
He just left you there.
Yeah. And
gosh.
I'm sitting there for, I don't know how long it was, an hour maybe, and he goes into this RV, and I'm like, do you know who? Because he never told me what we were doing, and he was going in there to meet his birth dad.
Wow.
And
so how was he when he came back out?
He was like, like his eyes were all bugged out,
yeah.
kind of not in the, almost like more questions came to mind, and not like he felt like at any, and he never talked about it.
That is why, because a lot of people. And I've met a few people in my day that have had similar occurrences or opportunities to meet their biological family, and I've seen all kinds of stories. Sometimes it's a great reunion. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't go well, and sometimes it's kind of in between. So, but I do think it's healthy. I think it's healthy for both parties. And my birth mother was able to tell me, and she was really emotional. Of course, I was too. But can you imagine, like, parents, giving birth to a child that you've never seen?
Yeah.
I mean, or maybe seen for a little bit, and all of a sudden they're gone. I mean, she actually gave me my baby blanket, which was so cool. And she's hanging on to it for 40 years,
wow.
hoping that maybe one day I'll get to receive that as a gift. So it's pretty cool.
Was that a situation where she was just young and?
Oh, that was a bad situation. She was 16. I've told the story a few times because it's tragic, and it sure makes you think, because with today in our world, the idea of abortion is such a hot topic, right? So we hear all these abortion laws and banning abortions and certain conditions like rape or incest. Well, I was actually a production of a rape, and so I don't know. Get a little choked up there, but just tough deal. She was 16. She goes to a party, and she's drinking at this party, and passes out drunk, and turns out she gets pregnant by this guy who's 19 at the time, and he was a soldier, home from Vietnam, and so she doesn't remember the encounter, obviously, and so that would be classified as, a rape today. And so back in those days, it wasn't really talked about that much,
Right.
but there was the ability to get an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
There was the ability for adoption. There was the ability for, us to, kind of make these two families work.
Yeah.
And they chose adoption.
And as a guy, we can't really understand all the emotions that go involved in carrying a child for
No way.
9 months and then not seeing them for 40 years. That's
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's different, and there's a special bond there between the mother and the child. And I had a great time with my mom. She's deceased now, but she lived a couple of years after that, and and then tragically died of cancer after that. But I got to meet her. I got to meet her parents.
Oh wow.
I got to meet 3 siblings.
Wow.
I got to meet my paternal grandfather.
Wow.
And what a really cool time.
But she did give you for adoption.
She
You
did.
have an adopted family that you grew up with.
Yep.
And did you guys live here in Tulsa?
We did. Lived in West Tulsa and then moved to Berry Hill, which is a
And
community.
those were the
out.
Sherwoods?
That was the Sherwoods. You bet.
And what was that home style like?
It was pretty cool. Oh, I got to tell you, my real name is Michael Keith Lanky.
Really?
How about that? I got
Michael
my
Keith
original
Lanky.
birth certificate.
Wow.
So I have. Yeah. So now I'm known as Mark Sherwood. Yeah. But my parents were great people. They couldn't have children, so of course, in their world, I was a gift that they got to select, and so
Were you an only child then?
only child.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that explains a lot.
I know, right? I but at the time, you kind of they were good about teaching me about adoption. They had this little book that they were probably told by somebody to read about how I was chosen and selected and special,
Right,
and
right.
they read that to me every night.
Awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And were you like when you were 2? Did you start doing push-ups or?
No, I was actually as a kid, I was not one of the better athletes.
Uh-huh.
I was just a stubborn hard worker, and I wasn't one of the stud kids or anything like
Right,
that.
right.
I wasn't, where the girls liked me. I didn't go to my senior prom because I couldn't find a date. One of those things. And so it's like, man, but I actually got an opportunity later on to play professional baseball, and part of that was in Australia.
Yeah.
And I graduated high school when I was 17, so I started early. I always teased my parents; she just wanted to get me out of the house when I was 4. But so going to college at 17 is a hard deal too, man.
Right.
But I found myself in Australia playing baseball, and this is before cell phones.
So you didn't play baseball as a kid?
I did. I played from
Okay.
2nd grade on, and then went to high school. And
When you were there, like in 2nd grade, little league and stuff, did you have any famous moments that were memorable that stuck with you that made you want to do this in your life?
probably there was this. When I was probably 2nd, 3rd grade, there's always that one kid that plays under a team that's bigger than everybody else and throws harder.
Right.
As my first, because we didn't have like T-ball and all this coach pick stuff back then. It was all kid pitch. And this guy threw so hard, if he hit you, it was probably going to knock you out, know.
Right.
And I remember that I stood up there to that guy one day, and I got a hit. And I thought then maybe I can do this, because I was kind of the hero, because nobody could hit this guy, because
Right,
he
right.
he's probably 6 foot tall and everybody else is 5 foot tall.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I had a similar situation as I had a kid like that when we were playing like a city championship game, and he was striking out everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And my last time up at bat, I decided I was gonna hit him no matter what. I didn't, but I hit the catcher's mitt, got on, stole 2nd, 3rd, and home.
Oh, wow.
And they won 10-1, but I messed up his perfect game. And after that, it was in my head I could hit him, and throughout.
Yep.
I moved to the neighboring city, and in high school I hit him,
Mm-hmm.
and then in college we went to the same school, and
Oh, wow.
and he was the only reason that I even got looked at, because he had so many scouts come see him that,
Wow.
and then I could hit him, that maybe I had something, they thought, but I didn't have nearly enough, and so
that's
it was,
cool.
but like my little league experience once, and I realized in this thing that a moment can change your life. Because my parents had moved from the city where I was known, and it was very first spring that we were there, and we were playing a little league game, and at that time they would have a parade that went through town for the whole little league, and it almost seemed like the whole town would collect, for the event that was going on, and they would have little exhibition games. And I was on the team that did well the year before, and it was my first time out to play in front of this crowd. And then the team we were playing was the championship team, and one of their best pitchers was pitching, and I hit a home run that went not just over the fence, it went like halfway through the parking lot.
Oh my goodness.
And after that, everybody just looked at me like the home run person. And I went from having no friends to having all kinds of
You're
friends.
the hero.
And it was just that one instant, that one moment, and you never know when it's going to happen. When was it for you?
I think that when I was in probably the 5th grade, I was pretty shy, right? And I remember that it was the teacher, and I don't remember if it's a speech class or something like that, but this teacher, she asked everybody in the class, what do you want to be when you grow up? And and everybody's hands goes up, and you never think she's going to call on you, right?
Right.
But she pointed at me. She said, "What do you want to be, Mark?" And I'm thinking, "Gotta think on your feet, quick, say something." And I blurted it out. I want to be a professional baseball player. I said that, right?
Uh-huh.
And she made a point at that to say, look right at me, and she said, "Do you really want to do that?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am," because back then you did say "ma'am" to people. At least if I didn't, I was going to get it when I got home. But she instructed me and everybody in the class at that point to get a piece of paper out, true story, and write on that piece of paper, "I will become a professional baseball player." And I did.
Yeah.
And she challenged us to hang on to that piece of paper and put it in our pockets and hang on to it until the dream comes true. Well, in your little kid, you sometimes take things literally. Well,
Right.
I did. I hung on to that thing and kept putting it in my pocket and over again. And my parents were like, "What are you doing?" But the teacher said, and I put it in my wallet, right? And I would always tuck it behind my driver's license because I knew where it was.
Yeah.
Well, years go on, and I probably got into late high school and forgot about it. And I got to college and forgot about it. And then I was sitting in the dugout one day in Adelaide, Australia. And there, you didn't have your cell phone or anything, and I had my baseball bag, and my wallet was there. And I don't remember if it was before the game or between innings or something, and I'm sitting there, and I thought, I wonder if that's still there.
Right.
And I went back, and I got my bag out, and I think that people thought I was looking for something that was probably not part of the baseball game. And I found my driver's license, pulled it out, looked behind, I couldn't find it. But then I thought, oh, wow. I turned my driver's license over, and there was a piece of paper on there that was yellowing and stuck to my driver's license, because back then it would take 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
And I peeled it off, and there it was. I will become a professional baseball player. I'm like, gosh. I was like, oh, my gosh. And I got all excited and probably choked up too.
How long did you play in Australia?
Just 1 year.
Uh-huh.
But I was rookie of the year, and
Wow.
my dream was to come back here and play.
Yeah.
And the problem was, and I get it, 24 years old at that time.
Sure.
Good, not great. Kept getting cut from all these pro teams.
Right.
And so I finally said, well, it's probably not my time. I could have went back and played, but, you got to move on with life.
Yeah, I was invited to come play at a pro team. It was like a 1A team,
Yeah.
And the guy who owned it was small town. The guy who owned it also had a hotel where you would stay. Unless the hotel was full, then you had to stay in the the locker room
Oh.
and sleep in. And I said, I'm going to go back to school,
Oh, yeah.
And that's when I kind of thought, well, I'm not going to make it, so I'm just going to.
Only a few are going to make it.
Yeah.
And you got to have a lot of breaks and have some incredible talent. I don't honestly think I had that much talent. I was just a hard worker.
But it's great opportunity,
Yeah.
It's great thing to learn and to be and have experience, especially in the creative, like especially all the things that you have done in your life. That the more that you do, the more creative you can be with your writing or your acting
I think
because
so.
you've met so many people and played those parts out. When did you?
Yeah.
Is that about when you decided to become a police officer?
Well, I came back to the States, obviously, and of course things had changed, and I was I started working out over there, so my body had changed, and people looked at me differently at that point. Go figure, right? I wasn't this dumpy kid anymore. I came back, had muscles,
Yeah.
and people hadn't seen me in a long time.
And and then though, baseball players, we didn't
Oh, no.
really do weights because
We
we were
didn't.
afraid that it tighten up your joints and
Oh,
mess
yeah.
up your swing and your arm and all that kind of stuff.
But it didn't. I had nothing to do during the day, and there was a little gym down the street, and I just started walking down there. And it helped because in that year, I went from pretty much a line drive kind of gap hitter where I could actually hit some over the wall at that point. I became kind of more of a home run threat. And when I got back, I had a couple of job opportunities because I had a degree in business with a minor in management at that point. And so I had a couple of financial jobs that I thought, no. And then somebody said, why don't you try out for the police department? I thought, okay, why not? And there it was 24 years later.
What was it like going through the academy?
It was hard. A lot of people don't have any idea what that is. It's very intense because you have to learn a culture, you have to learn the law, and you have to learn responsibility. A lot of people think police officers are just out there to just enforce the law, and it's more than that. You have to know the law because you have the power to take a person's life. I mean, think about that.
Right.
And it is hard. You're ran and exercised and stressed, and they're putting you through the paces because it's part of who you have to be. So you have to become resilient, and not everybody makes it through that. I think there might have been 4 or 5 people in my class that didn't make it. They washed out. And so interesting career. I learned a lot of stuff, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Yeah, we watch. My wife and I watched that show called The Rookie. Have you ever seen that?
I have.
And they put a lot of emphasis on the fact that you're basically, that part of the training is knowing that you might be in a situation where you're going to take a life.
That's right.
And
Exactly.
and it's why there's such high scrutiny on the way they put you through your training, because you have to not only be prepared for that event, but you have to be able to recover from it too.
Well, you do, and there's people that depend on you. Like if I was with somebody or somebody's with me in a situation, and been there many times, if you can't depend on somebody else, and if they make a mistake, it could cost both of your lives. Or it could cost the life of even a suspect that didn't have to die that day. And so it's a very important job, and our men and women in blue, I mean, it's not something people should disparage.
Were you? Did they call you a boot when you were a rookie?
They just call me Rookie or Rook.
Rookie?
Yeah.
How old were you when you were a rookie?
Probably 25. Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
And how long were you a police officer?
24 years.
24 years. Wow. And when did you move into being part of the SWAT team?
That would have been in 1993.
Okay.
And I was a part of the SWAT team for 10 years.
Now, people don't think of Tulsa as like, why do we even need a SWAT team, right? Was there a lot of activity, and what kinds of things would you end up?
A lot of activity. Tulsa, back in those days, a lot of the crime was different. It was more compressed to sort of tightened areas of communities, and that was back in the days when the Crips and Bloods, the L.A. street gangs would come in and they would sell crack cocaine, and it sort of was early in the stages of that. And so, there was a lot of guns and drug running and violence and gang shootings, and so there was a lot of things we did. We did a lot of high risk entry search warrants where there were known weapons. We did a lot of armed and barricaded situations that would occur. Hostage rescues, hostage negotiations, that's some hard. When you watch somebody die, I mean, in front of your eyes, that changes you on the inside, because you realize, life is not this thing that's just impenetrable.
Yeah,
it is a real deal that's really fragile, and people can make one decision that can cost them something. So, walked through a lot of stuff and saw a lot, but again, I wouldn't trade it. I mean, even though you don't necessarily forget those images, you can't, but they can teach you something.
I was working in Dallas on a 4th of July. I was in radio, and it was earlier in my career, and I worked nights. And so I'd get off at midnight, and it was the 4th of July, and I was driving home, and a guy in front of the old Cowboy Stadium flies around to hit 183, I think it was, hits the the little kind of bump thing that goes into, flew across like 4 lanes of traffic, hit the guardrail, rolled 100 yards in front of me, and by the time I got to him, and this was like, to me, the craziest thing was that how fast a body goes cold and hard.
Oh yeah.
And and his blood was all around. I was the first one there, and this was before cell phones. So I parked my car,
Waving your arms,
waving
no doubt.
everybody to go around till I could find a trucker that could get on his CB radio and get with authorities to bring someone out. And it was just, you're right. I mean, I've never, and the thing for me was, what could I do? What could I, but I couldn't do CPR because that was also the time of AIDS.
Yes.
And I had children, and I couldn't risk getting infected and something going on in my life. And I felt guilty for a long time because of that.
Wow.
And then I got a letter from his family that thanked me for just being enough of a person to stop.
Oh my gosh.
And
that's a great story.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I know a little bit of what that, because I only, that one time, but I imagine several times you probably not only were exposed to it, but had to help other officers that probably had those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. The hardest thing is to see children that are murdered or something like that. That's horrific, and no human being ought to experience that. But police officers do.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget that, it's, we're as military, historically is long distance stuff, bombs go up, people die, but this is close encounters, man. This is right there.
Yeah. In your neighborhood too. It's not like it's, thousands of miles away.
No.
So, where in there did the bodybuilding start and competitions?
Well, that started probably in 1993 or 2-ish, and it was a dare. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. There was the Police and Fire Games, the World Police and Fire Games at that point, and I was playing on a police softball team, and we were going there to compete, and they had this bodybuilding competition, and somebody said, "Hey, Sherwood, you should do that." I don't know how to do that. And so I thought, well, I guess I can learn how to do that, kind of the same deal. And I got a Muscle and Fitness magazine, and I started looking at pictures and figuring out what I needed to wear. And I thought, I don't want to wear a little Speedo. And but I figured enough out, and I started training for that. And I got there, and I think I placed like 4th in the World Police and Fire Games, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you continue doing other competitions?
I did. I competed all the way up and was eventually qualified for a national level. But, a lot of people back in those days, to get to where you were competitive at that level, you really had to take anabolic steroids. And as a police officer, that's a no-no, right? Yeah. So I probably got to where I could get to, and just kind of called it good. And I would compete occasionally, and I probably did that for 7-8 years, I guess.
So as an officer, where did you start to get into being like a bodyguard?
That was in the...
Is that during the days of being an officer?
late 90s. I worked an extra security job at Oral Roberts University here.
Oh, okay.
And I used to work there on Sunday night. There was a Sunday night Victory Christian Center service, and I would go there and do my thing and make a little extra money, moonlight or whatever. Yeah. And one night... they had a guest speaker. It was one of those televangelists, and one of their security guys just was friendly, said, "Hey, you should come out and help us on the road sometime." I'm like, what? And eventually one thing led to another conversation, and before I knew it, I was on private jets going everywhere. It was the craziest thing. Great experience, great times.
Yep, you can't name. You don't want to name those people.
No, better not. Better not. But I've been in the room with all of them and on private jets with all of them, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah, my experience. I worked for LaCie Broadcasting.
Oh, yeah.
It had several stations in the country.
No, the
and-
Summeralls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they would do telethons, and some of those ministers would come through.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things I thought was funny was they'd be wearing these $10,000, $20,000, excuse me, Rolex watches,
Yeah.
and diamond rings, and and all this, and they'd be talking about their jets.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it kind of distanced me from wanting to hear what those guys had to say, because before they went on the air, they would give those things to their assistants,
Yeah.
so that it didn't look like they were had quite what they had. But
Yeah, that was probably some of the stuff that I was exposed to, and kind of like you, I probably got disillusioned a little bit, quite honestly. Not knocking anybody, but
right,
for me personally, it seemed that I'm more of a giver, and it's. I mean, I appreciate nice things,
yeah,
but I'm always going to think about how I can make nice things happen for other people.
and I'm not against them
No.
either making a really good living,
Totally.
but having too much, two jets or this
Yeah.
and that. I mean, there's just like, oh, well, you could use that.
It'd be like
better
having
somewhere
5
else.
chairs here, and I just got one butt. Come on, man. Why do I need 5? There's no reason for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. But still, that would have been a really interesting experience. Who rushes to try to get to an evangelist? Was it just people who wanted to be healed, or people who had been
there's
preyed upon, or
Some crazy people, man. A lot of people that I dealt with. It would be like you'd have your typical altar calls, and I'd be dressed like this, except I'd have a gun on, and I'd be on the stage, look like one of the ministers, just sitting there, and nobody would really understand who I was. And then when it came time to sort of pray with people, you would look for hands, movements, quick movements, follow your kind of guy, and see who's trying to get close to them, and pay attention to the crowd, and I got pretty good at it. And you can kind of anticipate things happening. You can see agitation, for example, if somebody doesn't get prayed for and wants to kind of push up there, that has what they believe to be a higher need than somebody else. And then if the prayer time is done, for example, you might have people trying to climb up on the stage and follow them back to the back or something, and of course that's a no-no. And
Right.
so I get it. There's a reason that people have security, and I'm not knocking that. That was probably in those days pretty needed, actually.
So 24 years of being an officer and being a protector and doing all that. Where did you shift and start to think, I want to be a doctor? Did you do that after you met Michelle, or before?
That was before, actually.
Dr. Michelle is
my-
Mrs. Sherwood.
Yeah, my prime rib. So I was probably at the police department in the early 2000s, and I was put in charge I was shifted to the academy. They put me up there to work, to help training and recruiting, and at that point they put me in charge of a wellness-based program that we didn't have. They said, you just develop it. And so I started traveling around the country to different police departments to try to find best practices, and there wasn't anything.
Yeah.
And so I decided to just keep learning and studying, and I became very curious and interested in why, in that case, police officers were dying so young. They were living to 66 years of age, and that was it. And I thought, why is that? This seems like such a sad situation. And, of course, that got me sort of thinking, does that apply to everyone else too? And
Right.
what role does stress play, and lack of sleep, and, poor diet? And so that got me started on a studying train. And I kind of like, Forrest Gump started running and never stopped. I started studying and never stopped. And I still do today. I mean, we recently just went through another board certification. So it's been something that has driven me for a while, a curiosity to see how I can, protect and serve better, I guess.
Sure, yeah. And when I met you, still at a time maybe that health and wellness doctors were, there was like a more of kind of like a, documentaries started coming out about health, and how, the one where the guy just ate McDonald's for a month, and the one where the guy drank the smoothies for a month or whatever, and then health and wellness doctors weren't really like what is that? They don't give out regular medicine, or and the only people who do that were like voodoo doctors or
Oh, yeah.
something, right? At that point, and then as we got to know each other, and we did Fork Your Diet, which you find at OK Movie Stream and others as well. You know, the hardest, it wasn't hard per se, but the hardest thing I think is changing your mindset
Yes.
to saying, "Oh, I don't want that." How easy is it that but we've been trained and throughout our lives that, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm gonna jump in here and get a soda and a candy bar, get that sugar rush to get
Oh, yeah.
through the rest of the day," and to know that's addicting.
It's made that way. The greatest drug addiction is the addiction to these processed foods and sugars. And the ironic thing about it all is our federal government subsidizes those things. In other words, they give money to the industries that produce them so that they can be produced for a cheaper method and made available to more people.
Right.
And I've never understood that. And that's been something that we have tried to give people an alternate way to not be addicted, not fall victim to that, because a lot of our disease processes today are, I call them self-created, self-chosen, elongated suicide. And that's kind of what it is. And so I think that obviously we'll have plenty of clientele for a long time the way we're going.
It's funny because we just started adding the Beverly Hillbillies to the site, and in the first season was still a time when they had advertisers on there, and at the end of the show, the characters would be, whether it was Frosted Flakes or and even at that time, cigarettes were still allowed to be, and you see Jed and Granny smoking a cigarette, a Winston or something. I think it's not a Winston. I can't remember which one it is, but they're smoking it and they're doing their little tagline for it, and it's just hilarious to see that. And you would think, where they finally outlawed that, where would they ever look at outlawing things like candy bars from being advertised because of the health concerns?
I don't think they will at this point. I mean, we as a nation right now are really in the most poorest health we've ever been in history. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's not an understatement. And we are actually, according to the CDC, creating more diseases faster than we're creating people. And it's like, what? What is that? And the sinister thing behind it, I think, or probably the saddest thing, is the idea that there are people out there, the unscrupulous people, that are using that as a place to profit. So in other words, sickness has become a profit center. And that, to me, is very cruel and inhumane.
And I've seen from the time, because you and Dr. Michelle have been married, about 10 years now?
Yep.
And I saw you guys. I met early in your relationship when you started. You had it going, the Functional Medical Institute, but it was in its. I mean, Michelle had it going for a while, but when you came in, you guys started really growing fast.
Yeah, it's changed a lot in the last 10 years. We went from just a little corner office, no staff, no nothing, to now we probably reach 3 or 4 million people a year through various things, and we have, I don't know, 12, 13,000 people we deal with. It's a lot. And it's really interesting how that thing has grown over time, and how that, once voodoo doctors are now actually looked at as probably beneficial.
Yeah, and when you look at I think I was doing some research that the average clinic will have about 2,500 to 3,000 patients that they see every year, and you're in the 12 to 15,000 range, and that's a load on you guys, and a mission that you have been on yourselves to try to get people to understand the differences between better health through just through how you live your life and how you eat and way you prepare your meals and such. And
yes, and it's very possible to change things. I mean, we've seen people from all walks of life make subtle, small, consistent changes with great results. So it's not that hard, as you mentioned. It just requires a mindset and heart set change.
Now, I know in our movie, I lost 65 pounds.
Yeah.
But after a couple of years and going through COVID,
Oh, yeah,
and then COVID put me on a stress thing because we started our business. So I started stress eating gummy bears, and you know, now I'm finally at a place where I can go back and just, you know, it's about changing my mindset
It is.
and getting back to where, okay, I'm gonna, instead of saying start next week, and like I'm like, I don't like to go outside unless it's 55 degrees, and so that means living in Tulsa that we have maybe 5 months out of the year in the morning when it's, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
55
It's
or
going to
better.
be 85 in the morning soon. Yeah.
So so it's, you know, I know how to do it and what I need to do, and it's just because of you guys, and you know, and living through it. And then so then we went from you did from, you know, you wanted to do some acting and
Yeah.
produce some movies, and we met up, and you know, I remember the first time when you said, yeah, I want to be in a movie, and I said,
I remember that.
okay, yeah, well,
And you had done the acting,
why
I'm
don't
like,
you,
nope.
yeah, well, why don't you come over and we'll kind of, you know, but you nailed it. You were doing really good in every movie we've done, which at this point we're working on our 6th movie, and we have 5 of them out there. You've gotten better, and you even put the Holy Flicks where you
Yeah.
played 2 different characters and nailed the goofiness on.
Yeah, the Bradley goofiness.
Yeah,
That was fun.
yeah. How has that felt for you as you've evolved and grown?
I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of things that I do that is very challenging. You know, challenging to you emotionally, physically, in all areas. But I got to tell you, probably the acting part has been the greatest challenge, but it's also given me the greatest reward. Kind of sounds kind of crazy because we've seen people get well, but from a personal standpoint, I've got to have an outlet somewhere, and that for me has became sort of that outlet. I look forward to it. I remember you that first time. Have you done any acting? I'm like, nope. Can you do it? I don't know. So let's go for it. But it's been a journey to try and learn. And again, I've been a student of observation. You know, I watch people that I've got the opportunity to work with, and you know, and I watch movies and TV shows in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And I used to not think like that. Now I do think like that. So it's changed the whole way I view things, and it's probably opened up a door of creativity inside that I didn't know was there, but I like it. You know, I'm looking forward to doing more, and I want to get better at it. And I think that those things are possible.
That was one of my biggest fears when we first started, because I only recently watched a movie that reminded me of this, that where the guy played a cop, and the lead actor was a pretty well-known actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. I can't remember his name, but he's in one of my wife's favorite movies, the one where I think it's called, anyway, he plays a guy that a girl hires to go to a date, to go to a wedding, his sister's wedding, so that nobody bothers her about the wedding date, I think is what it's called, the movie. And he's in it, and so he's a pretty big star, well known, really well. And there's this cop that comes in pretty regularly, and he was horrible.
Oh, no.
And then I thought, what is that? You know, and he was the executive producer. You know,
Oh, he was.
Yeah. And
okay.
So that was my fear, that you were going to be like that, but you were nowhere near that.
I would hope you would say, no, dude, don't do that anymore. You know.
No, you were great. It was fun, and everybody enjoys working with you, and you bring you know, some energy to the sets that let people feel comfortable becoming, you know. It's one of my favorite things. I've said this several times on this show, is when the crew is filming and you guys do a scene, and sometimes I'll let you run through the whole scene as we're getting these shots, and we feel like we're interrupting a conversation, a private conversation, because everybody, works so well together. And
well, I've appreciated that, and I've tried to make it a mission to with everybody behind the scenes. It's just important to everybody in front of the scenes. Right. Behind the camera is important, and really, like Nick and Libby and the rest of the crew, that have
Daniel,
been there. Daniel, say hey, and the Dakotas.
Andrea,
oh my gosh, you got to go tell people how much you appreciate them, and that it all works together. And I've enjoyed getting to know some of the colleagues, the fellow actors and actresses, and to see their skill sets and stuff like that. And hopefully, even my presence is a comfort to them, that I'm not going to like mess something up so bad, that they're going to have to cover that. Hopefully, we can elevate the game a little bit to make it even more real.
Well, not only that, you and Dr. Michelle being willing to be the executive producers on these and make these so that they can even happen, that so many of those people, crew and cast, have gone on to do other even bigger, amazing things than what we're creating. Not that what we do, I don't think is not pretty sound, but they've gotten to fulfill their dreams and works and continue to grow, and that only helps us because then they continue to work with us, And,
well, they do. I think we've heard this a lot, that people that come and participate, they all make a comment about the ease of work and the calmness, and they talk about differences with different crews, and obviously there's a difference, I would suppose, but
and you've been exposed to some of that now because you've been going out on other projects.
It's different.
Yeah,
it's different. It's a whole different world. I think I appreciate, you and the rest of the team and the production that we have, because it's more like a family operation, and everybody does multiple tasks and does it well. And I think by that you can actually do more, get more, be more efficient. And I've been in other places where you got it seemed like you got one person to hold one leg of the camera tripod, and you got two other people, and somebody holds the camera. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm not understanding while this is going on, because I've always been, let's make sure we put the right people in the right position and not have one too many.
Right.
And so it's different, but I appreciate the idea of getting to help springboard other people's lives and give them an opportunity. And we've had some really, really, really good, talented people.
Yeah.
And I see nothing but great things for them.
And I love the fact that I can watch our movies and I feel like, I can put it up against a Hallmark movie or something on Netflix or, and we see ours are on Amazon and all those other places and Vudu and, and it's just really rewarding to know that hundreds of thousands, if not millions, are watching, our movies. And
well, every person that watches one of these is going to feel better afterwards. And that's kind of what we've tried to do in all of these, to leave the experience better than when it started. Mm-hmm. And, that's one thing about a movie that I can appreciate. You can go into someone's world or go into this world and sort of check out of your own and experience that and get involved in that. And if it's well done, it sort of does something to you on the inside. You feel different when you leave compared to when you came into it or when you watched it. And that's what movies used to do to me as a kid, and so now, to even watch them, the ones that you happen to be in or whatever, it's a pretty cool experience, I would say.
And now that we've done, with Oklahoma Movie Stream, which is kind of our own Netflix.
Yep.
And we're working to add in other independents like ourselves because we realize how difficult it is to get the distribution and get to the right places. And it's a whole another bit of excitement because now we have the website, we have a Roku channel, we've got a Fire TV channel, we've got a YouTube channel and Facebook and Instagram and it's funny to see. It's fun to see the reactions firsthand that we didn't get when we were going through distributors and such. And
well, these are people that you're getting to know and they can comment. And I encourage people to view these movies, look at them, check them out, and they're family friendly. That's the cool thing about it. They really have good, wholesome messages in it, which we need in the world today.
Yeah, and we see the practice continue to grow, as you said, and keeps you busy. But We going to keep making these movies together?
Oh yeah, I enjoy it. I look forward to it. It's a nice. I don't want to say my job is a grind, but it's a nice break
Right.
to allow that, and hopefully in the future, God willing, and the creek don't rise, as we used to say as a kid. Hopefully we can be able to keep these things going and roll with it some more.
Well, I'm surprised we were able to cover your whole life in 45 minutes. I didn't
Yeah.
think we were, but we did. We covered it
Not
all.
bad.
It's fun. And, everybody that's on the show gets a T-shirt.
Oh my gosh, that's
So,
cool.
Okay,
This
you
is
can
an XL, right?
Yeah,
So-
you can also find them at
there we go.
you can also find them, at OK Movie Stream. Look for Dr. Mark in
there.
several different roles, and and
It's nice.
thanks so much for spending time getting to learn more about Dr. Mark and what we do and why we love doing it, and we'll continue to. Thanks for joining us.